Today I have the opportunity once again to answer a question from someone who follows us on one of our social media platforms. If you've been following us for the last couple of weeks, we asked a few weeks ago for anyone that has a question, something that might be on their mind, something they thought we could address, to send that to us. And we got a bunch of great questions and had the opportunity last week to answer one. And looking forward to answering this question today. But I do want to remind you, if you have a question, something that you've been thinking about and something you think we might be able to answer, we would love to do that. We're not suggesting that we have all of the answers and we've got everything figured out. But one thing we do have is a lot of experience dealing with a multitude of life issues. And because of the kind of work we do with the men and women who are dealing with all kinds of stuff, imagine everything from one end to the other. We've dealt with it, and we've had to figure some of these things out. And so we'd like to share more of that with you, share some of the things that we've learned and some of the experiences that we've had with you. So if you have a question, it can be a Bible question, it can be a relationship question, or a question about our organization or how we operate. It doesn't matter. We would love to hear from you, and you can go ahead and just put a question in the comment section, and we would love to pick that up, and we'll get to that in the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to answer a question today, and the question today that I have is a great question. It's one that honestly describes a situation that we deal with often. But I will say this at the outset. I'm going to give some thoughts around this and try to do my best to clarify and amplify some things here. But this question and this circumstance that's being described is one that would require much more time than we have on a short video like this. So I want to kind of get the ball rolling, throw out some thoughts and some considerations, and then encourage anyone who finds themselves in this situation to continue to seek help. And so we'll talk about this, and I'll ask the question first, I'll read the question first, and then I'll go to a few notes that I wrote down. Here's the question, and it's a little bit long. I'm going to read the whole thing. What are some ways to be there for your spouse who has dealt with traumas or very intense or high stress situations on the job? I don't think I'll ever be able to understand that side of things. I only know how it can affect me or the kids at times. How can I be loving and Christ-like in a way that can help him feel a safe, loving home environment in those tough moments, especially when I at times deal with stressful moments and emotions on the other end at home? And what a great question. Again, this is a question that really describes so many of the situations that we deal with. And the spouse who's hurting, the spouse who's dealt with the trauma or the stressful situations, can be the husband, can be the wife. It doesn't matter. We again, deal with this on both sides of the relationship equation. So let me read the first sentence again, because really I think that encapsulates it, and then we'll talk from there. What are some ways to be there for your spouse who has dealt with traumas or very intense or high stress situations on the job? And this is, to me, a great sentence. It asks a great question, but it really expresses the heart of the question. The heart of the question is something like this. I want to take care of my spouse. I want to encourage them and help them. I want to be there for them. I just don't exactly know how. And what a great place to start. We want to be the very best spouse we can, the very best parent that we can, but we don't always know how to get there, and that's the question. And so we'll break this down a little bit, all right? In the question, the statement is made, I don't think I'll ever be able to fully understand, but I do know some of the issues or some of the problems that this causes. And understanding fully the trauma or the stress, or understanding why it is that our spouse, our significant other is acting this way, is not the most important thing. But dealing with the situation you find yourself in becomes the most important thing, and that's what we're talking about. So the first thing I'd say is this, and I'm not really responding to this or saying this because of this specific question or this person, but just because I know there's a broad audience here, and so there's a broad kind of spectrum of issues that people are dealing with. And so take this if it applies. If it doesn't, then let it go. But here's the first one. If you are in a situation dealing with a spouse, a loved one who's stressed out and maybe acting out because of that, if there is some kind of abuse taking place in the home, of you as the spouse or of the children. If there's abuse, the very first thing you need to do is get to a safe place. Get to a place where you're no longer in an abusive situation. Often spouses will say, I love them so much that I have to deal with this, the physical abuse, the violence, some of the things that are happening in the home. No, you don't. You need to get to a safe place where you can then begin to do the things that need to be done to provide reconciliation and begin moving forward. You don't need to stay in a place where you or your children are being abused. And again, this is a much larger conversation, but that's where I would start. And if that doesn't apply to you, then it doesn't apply to you. Let us move on from here. But first, get in a safe place. And that is really the advice I'd give to anyone that was sitting across the desk from me saying, what do I need to do? If you're in an abusive situation, a violent situation, get out of that and then begin taking the next steps. All right, so what's the next step? And maybe this is your first step. Here's what I would say. Get counsel for them and for you. Get counsel for them and for you. I'm going to assume that your spouse dealing with stressful life situation or work situation, maybe a trauma that's happened in their life, wants help, they're looking for help, and they need help. You as a spouse are not always the best person to give them the advice that they need. What they need to do may be very clear to you, but it also may not be heard from you. So what I would do is encourage them to find someone who can help them. A program like the Mighty Oaks Foundation programs, that's what we do. We are able to take folks for a week and really work through some of these issues, give an outside voice, and provide some perspective. Perhaps it's a biblical counselor, someone that can take the Bible, the roadmap that God has given to us, and begin to illuminate the path forward. Find that person. You can often find them through a local church. There are organizations that you can seek out that can provide biblical counseling. Sometimes that counseling comes at no cost and it can be very helpful. A church is a good place to start with that. Start with one of the pastors. Ask to sit down and have the opportunity to receive counsel from them, and they can help you know who to connect to beyond that. So find counsel, find help for your spouse. Give them someone that they can talk to and learn from. Find help and counsel for yourself. Again, I'm not there. I can't see your whole situation, but someone who is a little bit closer, who can ask clarifying questions, can often shed light on what you're dealing with and the best way to move forward. And then try to find a counselor who can work with you together as a couple to help you move forward together and grow together and deal with these issues together. That can be so helpful. Find a person who can speak into your situation from a biblical perspective, illuminating truth on your situation. That would be a great place to start. Next, and this is the next one. It's got a couple of subpoints, but I'll throw these out at you. Remove known stressors in the home. Now, I think all of us, if we've been with someone for any length of time, know what stresses them out. And if you know what stresses your spouse out, then remove those known stressors. Remove those things. Take those things out of the home so that they're not there. And create an environment where they can de-stress, calm down, think clearly, and then that often allows some of these other conversations to happen, all right? So remove the stress. De-stress the home as much as possible. Remove those things that cause irritation or aggravation, all right? But with that, then schedule a time to talk. You're going to need to have some real conversations with your spouse about how you feel, about how their behavior is impacting the children, about the opportunities to seek outside counsel. You need to have the opportunity to have these conversations, but you need to have them at the right time. Timing is very important here, very important. So you de-stress the home, you remove those things you know are an irritation, and then you schedule a time to sit down and talk. When can we sit down and talk about some things that I'm concerned about, some things that I'd like to share with you? Maybe you need to go and have that conversation in a public place. Sometimes we behave better in public than we do in our homes. But schedule a time to have those conversations. It's very important that you have those conversations. And along with that, learn to communicate. Be clear. Ask questions. Ask questions like this. How do you feel? How does that make you feel? Why does that upset you? Talk about how you feel and about the things that you just don't understand, you're not clear on. Do your best to communicate. Ask clear, illuminating questions, all right? So you de-stress the home as much as possible. You take away those things that cause stress. You schedule a time to have real conversations about how you can move forward. And then you continue to develop your communication. Ask good questions. Ask clarifying questions. Seek not only to be heard, but to understand. And that's really important. All right, now, this is the time in the conversation where someone says, well, I hear what you're saying, but my spouse doesn't want to talk to me. It doesn't matter what I do, they get upset. They don't want an outside counselor. We're walking around on eggshells all of the time. And although it may not be violent or abusive, they're emotionally very angry. Maybe there's some emotional abuse, and there's a lot of just turmoil in the home. And I'm trying to do these things. I'm trying to ask questions. I'm trying to make things better, but it's just not working. All right, so again, a couple of things here. If you've done these things, trying to de-stress the home, trying to set up a time to talk, sitting down and having these conversations, asking clarifying questions, seeking to understand, trying to pull others in to help with the counseling. If you have sincerely done these things, and my experience has been that often there is a sincere attempt made to do these things, and sometimes there's not. If you have sincerely attempted to do these things, though, and your spouse has pushed you out or said, get away from me, I don't want to have anything to do with that, then there's a next thing you can do. And here's the next thing. Do right. Do right. One thing I learned a long time ago, and I try to often encourage folks with the truth of this, is that you cannot make anyone do anything. You're not responsible for how others behave. You're responsible for how you respond to how they behave. And some people, a spouse included, will behave badly, and that's not something that you can control. But what you can do, even when your spouse is behaving badly, is you can do right. God still wants you to do the right thing. God still wants you to spend time reading and understanding His Word, spending time in prayer, spending time at church, and taking your children along to help them understand that even though mom or dad is really struggling here, we can do the right thing. It means not lashing out when you feel like lashing out. It means maintaining the control that you need to have emotionally and spiritually in your home. Do right. Do the right things. Do the right things for you. Do the right things for your kids. And do them without trying to drag the other person along or make them feel guilty or any of those things. Just do right. Be right. The Bible, interestingly, I love Ephesians 5. It talks about the marriage relationship and how that pictures our relationship with God and the church. But there's a verse in Ephesians 5 that says that wives should do right, should honor their husbands, should treat their husbands well, as unto the Lord. And I love that verse. It says that men should love their husbands, or men should love their wives, rather. Men should love their wives and love them the way that Christ loved the church and gave Himself for it. There's so many great things there. But in talking to wives dealing with their husbands, it says you need to do right because you love God, right? You need to do right because you love God. And that's really important. Do right because you love God. And if your spouse is not responding the way that you would hope that they would, or you think they should, or they probably should, then do right because you love God. Teach your kids that you can do right even when other people in your life aren't doing right. And then I would say this, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. You need friends. You need those relationships, those people that can speak into your life. You might need some time away. And, often it's, well, I don't want to leave the kids there, or my spouse is not interested in taking care of the kids. Well, that may be the case. Find a babysitter. Find someone who can watch the kids, and find the opportunity to get away a little bit and to think a little bit. And I'm not talking about going away for days at a time. I'm just talking about go and get a cup of coffee and sit down and think and process some of these things. Take care of yourself and get in a place where you're healthy emotionally and spiritually as well. And the last thing I would say is this: maintain hope. Maintain hope. There is hope. There is hope. God is bigger than your situation. God loves your spouse more than you do, even though they may not be acting the way they should right now. God cares about them, and God cares about you, and God cares about your kids. And I'll tell you just from my own experience, watching hundreds of folks come through our program that are dealing with similar situations to the one described here, there is hope, given time and consistency and doing right because we love God. And staying in the fight. Through all of that, there is hope, and there is healing, and there is help. It can and will get better. Just stay in there and trust that God's plan is the right one and that God will work and oversee all of this. So let me run through this again. If you are in an abusive situation, first of all, get out of that situation. Right? Get out of that situation and then seek help. So don't stay in an abusive situation. Get out and then seek help. And then find a counselor, find someone who can provide that help to you, maybe through a church or a biblical counselor, someone who can help your spouse and someone who can help you and someone who can work with you together. Remove the known stressors in the home, those things that you know will cause frustration and anger and anxiety. Take those things away and then work on scheduling a time to talk and develop your communication with your spouse. Ask clear questions and ask consistent questions. Do right because you love God. Go to church, read your Bible, spend time in prayer, respond well, and if nothing else, set an example for your children. Take care of yourself. Get some people in your life that can be a help to you and an encouragement to you. Take some time to process and then maintain hope. What a great question. This is a very difficult situation, and I feel for you. Again, hundreds of conversations have been had with folks that are in a situation very similar to the one that you described. But keep moving forward, and God will continue to work in your life.